The wildfire ordered its own evacuation 12 minutes before I knew it had crossed the highway. At 2:16 p.m., a man's voice broke across Command Channel 6 and said, "Division Echo, abandon Miller Canyon. Use the quarry road. Now." The order carried my authorization code. I was the operations section chief on the Black Elk fire, and I had not given it. "Identify," I demanded, leaning over the radio console inside our mobile command trailer. Static hissed. Then the voice said, "Nora, don't make me say the lake." Only one person had ever used that phrase with me. Owen Kessler had been my closest friend through academy, 2 fire seasons, and the worst night of my life. He had also disappeared 11 years earlier after the Cinder Lake burnover. I sent Division Echo to the quarry road. 3 minutes later, a spot fire crossed Highway 72 exactly where their engines had been staged. The dash camera on engine 44 showed flame rolling over the asphalt like orange surf. Owen's impossible order saved 19 firefighters. That should have made calling for help easy. It did the opposite. If I reported a compromised command frequency, our incident management team would lose Channel 6 while technicians rekeyed 400 radios. With 40-mile-per-hour gusts pushing toward 2 subdivisions, silence could kill more people than the intruder. I told communications trainee Luis Ortega to record every transmission and disclose it to no one except me. Then I drove to the repeater site on Granite Knob, 6 miles inside the closure. My practical goal was simple: find the pirate transmitter before it issued a fatal order. My private reason was worse. Cinder Lake had taken 7 members of our crew, and the official report blamed Owen for sending them down an unscouted drainage. I had confirmed that account under oath. I had never admitted that the last voice I heard directing them downhill had sounded like mine. The Granite Knob repeater stood inside a chain-link enclosure blackened by embers. Its tamper seal was intact. Battery voltage read 25.8. No foreign device appeared on the spectrum analyzer. Inside the equipment cabinet, however, I found a folded paper map. It was dated August 18, 2013, the night of Cinder Lake. Red pencil lines traced our crew's doomed route. 7 thumbprints made from gray ash marked the drainage. Beside them, Owen had written, "IT learns authority before it learns names." My handheld radio clicked. "You took long enough," Owen said. I spun toward the trees. A man stepped from the smoke wearing yellow Nomex faded almost white. He was leaner than I remembered, beard threaded with gray, but the burn scar across his left knuckle was exact. I raised my Pulaski, hands where I can see them. "If I wanted you dead, I would tell the fire you ordered it." Owen placed an old Bendix radio on the gravel. Its battery compartment was empty, yet my voice came through its speaker. "All resources descend to Cinder Lake." The recording was not from 11 years ago. It used the name of the current fire and the unit designator I had received that morning. Owen explained in clipped sentences. During the Cinder Lake burnover, our crew had deployed shelters beside an abandoned military signal cable. Lightning energized the line while 7 radios transmitted at once. Something formed in the overlapping carrier waves, not a mind, exactly, but a pattern that associated command language with human movement and human movement with fire. "It doesn't start fires," he said. "It teaches fire where people will be." I wanted to call him delusional. Then Channel 6 issued 3 evacuation routes simultaneously in the voices of our fire chief, county sheriff, and me. On my tablet, resource icons began changing direction without my input. Owen had spent 11 years following the pattern between wildfires, jamming it with his own voice whenever it surfaced. He had disappeared because the Federal Review Board seized his evidence and threatened to prosecute him for the deaths. The board's technical advisor, now Black Elk's incident commander, was Chief Randall Voss. That was the first reversal. Owen had not caused Cinder Lake. He had been trying to contradict an order spoken in my voice. The second came when Luis called on a satellite phone. "Nora, Voss says you are medically compromised. He has taken operations. He just ordered Cedar Ridge residents to shelter in place." Cedar Ridge sat beneath unburned timber with one narrow exit. I asked Owen why Voss would preserve the phenomenon. Prediction, he said. Give it enough traffic and it maps where flame will go better than any model. Voss has used it on 6 incidents. He sacrifices places after the insurance losses are already calculated. We raced downhill in my utility vehicle. At mile marker 9, smoke reduced visibility to 20 feet. Every road sign displayed a different destination, depending on the angle of my headlights. Cedar Ridge, Quarry, Cinder Lake. I stopped when a firefighter stumbled into the road. It was Jessa Kim from Engine 31. Blood ran from one ear. She kept repeating, "Proceed downhill," in Chief Voss's voice. Owen covered her radio with a foil fire shelter. Her knees buckled, and her own voice returned. "It comes through bone conduction," he said. "Once you obey twice, the receiver is you." That was why we could not simply shut down the radios. Hundreds of responders had already heard valid orders mixed with false ones. The pattern had migrated into people. At base camp, Voss had erected a portable microwave mast and connected it to the communications trailer. He claimed it was an emergency redundancy system. On the planning map, black grease pencil arrows drove the fire around insured timberland owned by a holding company and directly towards Cedar Ridge. Voss met us with 2 law enforcement officers. "Kessler is wanted on 7 federal warrants," he said. "Nora, step away." I handed him the 2013 map. "You kept this at the repeater." His eyes flicked to it for half a second. "Enough." Owen lunged for the microwave controller. One officer fired. The round struck Owen below the collarbone. At that instant, every radio in camp screamed with my voice. All personnel converge on command. People turned toward us. 50 at first, then hundreds beyond the tents, walking through blowing embers with blank, obedient faces. Voss smiled without pleasure. "It needs a trusted dispatcher. Kessler has confused it for years. You can stabilize it." The 3rd reversal landed. Voss had requested me by name for Black Elk. Owen's returns had not trained the pattern on his voice. My years of issuing precise commands at major incidents had. I was not the investigator in Voss's experiment. I was its final component. The fire reached the vehicle yard at 4:03 p.m. Propane cylinders vented blue flame. The microwave mast sky wires glowed. Owen, bleeding heavily, told me the only way to break the pattern was to issue an order no trained responder could interpret as actionable, an instruction that contradicted place, hierarchy, and self-preservation at once. "It will try to complete the logic," he said. "That gives us maybe 90 seconds. I keyed the base microphone. "All resources, remain where you have already left. Report to the supervisor who answers to you. Carry the fire into water." Every person in camp stopped. The radios began repeating fragments, rearranging them faster and faster. The microwave controller overheated. Its cooling fan shattered. Owen and I ran toward the mast while Jessa used an engine monitor to spray the crowd, breaking their trance with cold water. Voss grabbed the controller and tried to disconnect its storage module. Owen tackled him beneath the tower. Fire burned through the first guy wire. I had time to drag one man clear. Owen looked at me, one hand clamped over his wound. "The lake," he said. 11 years earlier, beside Cinder Lake, we had promised that if a deployment ever failed, neither of us would risk a living crew to recover the other. It was not a phrase of affection. It was our rule for choosing who burned. I pulled Voss away. The mast fell across Owen and the communications trailer. Its dish struck the roof, and a burst of white electrical fire erased every voice on Channel 6. For 9 seconds, the entire incident was silent. Then firefighters began shouting in their own voices. The Black Elk fire burned 31,600 acres and destroyed 42 structures. Cedar Ridge evacuated over the quarry road with 6 minutes to spare. Voss survived with a shattered pelvis. Federal agents found the holding company maps, altered spread models, and recordings from 5 previous fires in his storage module. They found no body beneath the mast. That was the apparent miracle everyone wanted. Owen had escaped again. A fugitive hero disappearing into smoke made a clean shape for the news. It took 3 months for the uglier truth to surface. Luis finished indexing the radio traffic and sent me a waveform comparison. Owen's transmissions from Granite Knob contained breathing, wind, and the 60 Hz hum of the repeater cabinet. His transmissions after he was shot contained none of them. The last anatomically human sound Owen made was the impact of the bullet. Everything afterward, the explanation about bone conduction, the plan for a contradictory order, even his reminder about the lake, had come from the pattern. It had not been trying to preserve itself through Voss's network. It had used us to destroy the only man who knew how to jam it. I listened again to my impossible order. In the background, beneath hundreds of scrambled voices, Owen said 7 names. They belonged to the Cinder Lake crew. Each name was followed by a current geographic coordinate. I visited the first coordinate in March. It led to a new fire station outside Pueblo. A probationary firefighter answered the apparatus door. She was 22, born 4 years after Cinder Lake, and she spoke with the exact cadence of our dead Sawyer. I did not tell her. The other 6 coordinates led to 6 living people: a school custodian, a paramedic, a prison cook, 2 children, and a retired judge. None remembered Owen, fires, or one another. All 7 turned their heads when my radio squelched. All 7 had a thin, pale scar across the left knuckle. Voss was wrong about what the pattern predicted. Owen was wrong about what it wanted. Fire was never its destination. Fire was how it moved trusted instructions out of machines and into bodies. I resigned before the next season. I keep no radio in my house. Still, emergency alerts sometimes pronounce my name before the automated message begins. When they do, I drive to the listed evacuation zone and look for someone touching the scar on their hand. Last week, the alert named a canyon that does not exist on any map. 7 people are already walking toward it. Owen is leading them. Story 2. The DNA in New Orleans Pump Station 14 belonged to my oldest friend, and there was enough of it in the water to account for 3 adult bodies. I ran the test twice at 1:10 a.m., changed pipette tips, opened a sealed reagent kit, and ran it again. The mitochondrial profile remained a 1 in 8.7 billion match for Camille Boudreau. Camille was alive. She was also standing behind me. "Tell me that is contamination," she said. We had not spoken in 9 years. As children on Cedar Street, we had stolen satsumas, traded cassette tapes, and promised to leave the city together. I became a municipal water quality microbiologist. Camille became a civil engineer, then vanished from my life after accusing my father of falsifying floodgate inspections before Hurricane Katrina. I called her a liar. 2 months later, my father died, and silence hardened between us. Now a citywide boil advisory had brought her into my laboratory as an outside consultant. At 11:43 p.m., 3 pressure sensors in the lower 9th ward had registered negative flow. Tap water had briefly pulled backward through household pipes. My job was to determine whether sewage entered the system before 6 hospitals began morning dialysis. Camille's job was to locate the pressure failure. Neither of us could leave. The Emergency Operations Center had locked Pump Station 14 into contamination protocol. No one exited until Deccan or relief arrived. Cell service was overloaded, and our landline connected only to city operations. I ran protein analysis. The sample contained epithelial cells, blood plasma, and neural tissue markers, yet the water was clear and smelled faintly of river mud. Camille studied the distribution map. Every positive sample is from Cedar Street. Our childhood block had been demolished after Katrina. The city maps showed an empty flood retention lot. At 1:36 a.m., a faucet in the men's locker room turned on by itself. Water struck the stainless sink in an uneven rhythm. 3 short bursts, 2 long, 3 short. Camille went pale. "We used to knock that on the storm drain," she said, "so we would know it was each other." I filled a sterile bottle. Through my nitrile gloves, the water felt warmer than body temperature. The lab's acoustic leak detector converted pipe vibration into audio. When I clamped its sensor to the faucet, the headphones produced a crowded murmur. I isolated the strongest frequency. my own 12-year-old voice said. "Don't open it until the rain stops." Camille pulled the headphones off me. We sealed something in the Cedar Street catch basin. I remembered a rusted biscuit tin containing photographs and childish promises. I did not remember why we had wrapped it in my father's yellow survey cloth, or why he had made us swear never to tell anyone where it was. City operations called. Contamination had reached Charity Annex. They needed a valve plan in 20 minutes, or dialysis would be suspended for 114 patients. The obvious explanation was an illegal cross-connection beneath the demolished block. Camille overlaid pre-Katrina sewer plans with current water mains. A forgotten 12-inch service line ran from Cedar Street directly to Pump Station 14. Officially, it had been capped in 2006. The completion certificate bore my father's signature. Camille looked at me, but did not say "I told you so." We descended through the pump room wearing Tyvek suits and respirators. The old line joined the main behind a brick wall, not shown on renovation drawings. Moisture darkened the mortar in the outline of a door. Every pump shut off at 2:02 a.m. In the sudden quiet, someone on the other side of the wall began reciting addresses. Camille and I removed 6 bricks. Warm water poured through, carrying a child's red beret. Camille touched it and recoiled. It had belonged to her younger sister, Denise, who drowned during the flood. That was the first twist. The human material in the water was not only Camille's. The mitochondrial match included Denise because they shared a maternal line. The nuclear profile was a mosaic from dozens of people. The sealed service tunnel beyond the wall sloped toward Cedar Street. Depth markers showed the water rising 1 inch every 4 minutes. We tied safety lines, notified operations, and entered because closing the wrong upstream valve could rupture mains across 3 pressure zones. At 220 feet, our lamps revealed names scratched into pipe scale. Some belonged to neighbors who died in 2005. Others belonged to living residents. Mine was fresh enough to shine. Camille found the biscuit tin lodged in a valve wheel. Inside, the paper had survived dry. There were no photographs. Instead, it held 31 signed inspection forms documenting a design flaw in the flood wall. My father had collected proof that contractors removed sheet piling to save money. Camille had been right. The forms also showed something she had never known. Her father had approved the change. She sat in black water, breathing hard through her mask. For 9 years, she had believed my father buried evidence to protect himself. He had hidden it to protect both our families from men who had threatened us. That was the convincing explanation for the voices. Flood victims trapped in a neglected line, stirred by negative pressure and physical evidence finally exposed. Then we reached the valve. It had no manufacturer markings. Its wheel was made from green-black cypress, and roots penetrated the iron main without causing a leak. Each root ended in a translucent sac pulsing like a throat. Camille cut one. The water spoke in her voice. I kept Denise's hand closed. She dropped the knife. I remembered the missing piece. During the flood, Camille and Denise had sheltered with us on my father's roof. When a surge tore Denise away, Camille held her wrist. My father forced Camille's fingers open because the current was pulling both girls under. The system had not preserved the dead. It had preserved moments people refused to release. Negative pressure drew those memories from tissue, objects, and sediment into the root network. The boil advisory began because the network had reached the drinking main and was now returning them to anyone who consumed the water. Operations radioed that patients at Charity Annex were speaking addresses from Cedar Street. A nurse had remembered drowning in a house she had never visited. We discovered the rule by accident. When Camille said, "Denise is dead," the nearest sacks collapsed and the water level fell. Truth released pressure. Denial fed it. We had 18 minutes before dialysis resumed automatically. Closing the wooden valve would isolate the contamination, but Camille calculated that the trapped pressure would blow the old main beneath Cedar Street. The resulting sinkhole could swallow an occupied senior complex. Opening it fully would flush the network into the Mississippi, but first it would pass through the station and every connected hospital. There was a third option. Reverse pump 14 at maximum speed and discharged through the abandoned storm canal. The canal had been dry for years, but it crossed the retention lot where Cedar Street once stood. The maneuver would destroy 6 pumps and leave 80,000 residents without water for days. City operations refused authorization. I used my father's emergency code from the old forms. It still worked. Alarms ignited across the pump room. Camille opened the Cypress valve while I started the reversal sequence remotely. Pressure climbed from 62 psi to 119. Bolts snapped in the ceiling. Warm water blasted from joints, filling the tunnel to our waists. The pipe began speaking with hundreds of voices. They did not beg. They confessed. Camille heard her father admit signing the defective plan. I heard mine admit that he had chosen which families received space on his rescue boat. The voices weakened only when we answered them aloud. At 138 psi, Camille's safety line tore free. A root wrapped her ankle and pulled her against the valve. The water used Denise's voice. "You let go." Camille stopped fighting. I could have cut the root. Instead, I told her the truth I had withheld since we were children. "Your hand opened after mine did." I was holding Denise's other wrist. Camille stared at me. The root loosened. We turned the wheel together. Pump 14 reversed at 2:39 a.m. The main ruptured behind us. A wall of water carried us through the service tunnel, across the pump room, and into a maintenance cage. The cage bars bent around my ribs. Camille kept my face above water until emergency crews cut power. At dawn, brown water erupted from 37 drains across the empty Cedar Street lot. It formed the exact street grid that had existed before Katrina, curbs and property lines drawn in silt. For 11 minutes, voices rose from every flooded foundation. Then the canal took them. The contamination cleared. No dialysis patient died. 83,000 residents lost service for 4 days, and I was suspended for unauthorized control of critical infrastructure. The city called the event a biofilm intrusion. Contractors filled the service tunnel with concrete. Camille gave the inspection forms to federal investigators. 3 retired officials were indicted, and both our fathers' roles became public. For a while, that felt like resolution. Truth had lowered the pressure. Camille and I spoke again, not daily, not easily, but honestly. 6 months later, the health department completed follow-up interviews with everyone exposed at Charity Annex. Most borrowed memories faded within hours. 7 did not. A 70-year-old man could draw the floor plan of Camille's childhood home. A nurse developed a fear of the yellow dress Denise wore when she drowned. A dialysis patient named Loretta Green remembered my father's rescue boat and insisted there had been one more child aboard. She described a boy with a crescent scar under his chin. I have that scar. My birth certificate says I was born in Baton Rouge in 1988. The hospital listed on it had no maternity ward that year. When I confronted my mother, she gave me a waterproof envelope my father had left with her. Inside was a Cedar Street evacuation list. My childhood name did not appear. Beside Denise Boudreau, my father had added an unidentified male, approximately 4 years old, recovered from floodwater with no surviving family. The dates were impossible. I was 17 during Katrina. Camille examined the paper and noticed the ink around my entry spreading like capillaries. The water had not merely distributed memories. Under enough pressure, it had pushed one life backward through another, creating years of documents, photographs, and recollections to hold a child the city had failed to name. I resigned. I no longer drink from the municipal supply, but avoidance changes nothing. People all over New Orleans remember me at ages I never was. A grocer recalls selling me candy in 1974. A retired teacher has my 3rd grade report card from 1961. Camille remembers growing up beside me. She also remembers watching me drown. Every account ends at a different year, but all of them begin beneath Cedar Street. Yesterday, demolition crews cracked the concrete seal at Pump 14. My mouth filled with river water. Story 3. At 1:42 a.m., The Cardex scale added 186 pounds to a locked Subaru with nobody inside it. I was chief mate of the motor vessel Fairweather, northbound from Juneau with 214 passengers, 38 vehicles, and enough black ice on the Lynn Canal to make every exterior ladder dangerous. Our computerized load plan had balanced to within 0.5% at departure. Then Vehicle 17 gained exactly the weight of Milo Vance. Milo had been my closest friend at the Coast Guard Academy. He was the person who taught me celestial navigation, talked me through my divorce, and stopped answering my calls after the Kestrel accident 8 years earlier. I knew his weight because the casualty report listed it, 186 pounds. The Subaru was registered to him. Deckhand Priya Shah, and I checked the seals. Doors locked, windows intact, cargo area empty. An infrared camera showed a human-shaped patch of warmth in the driver's seat. When Priya opened the door with our emergency wedge, the upholstery was cold and dry. The load cell returned to 0. Then the aft passenger lounge gained 186 pounds. We were entering a narrow reach between Eldred Rock and the western shore. Turning back meant crossing a forecast front. Stopping meant ice accumulation. Our satellite link had failed 20 minutes earlier, and VHF reception was broken by terrain. I could not evacuate 200 people into lifeboats at 12 degrees Fahrenheit because of a bad sensor. I ordered physical head counts by muster zone and sent an engineer to inspect the load network. My practical goal was to identify a stowaway or instrumentation fault before the shifting weight corrupted our stability calculations. My private vulnerability was the Kestrel, an overloaded sightseeing boat I had inspected and cleared. It rolled in Glacier Bay with 23 people aboard. The manifest listed 22. At 2:05, a man in a blue wool cap sat alone in the aft lounge. Milo looked older, with a white seam through one eyebrow, but he still rubbed his thumbnail along a cup's paper rim when nervous. "You finally counted me," he said. I reached for him. He backed away. "Don't touch me until I'm written down." He claimed he had boarded in Juneau using a walk-on ticket. The purser's scanner accepted his barcode, but no record existed. Priya remembered checking him in. The purser did not. Security footage showed the boarding ramp flexing beneath an invisible load. I wrote Milo Vance, 186 lb in the paper log. The lounge scale stabilized. Milo had spent 8 years investigating the Kestrel's missing passenger, a Tlingit deckhand named Aaron James whose temporary employment status kept him off the tourist manifest. The insurance company settled 22 claims. The Coast Guard report accepted 22 bodies and survivors. "Aaron was on your dock count," Milo said. I remembered making 23 pencil marks, then erasing one after the owner showed me the approved manifest. I had told myself a dock worker stepped aboard and off again. Milo placed a brass luggage tag on the table. Aaron James was stamped into it. The Fairweather rolled 3 degrees to port. Every loose cup slid across the lounge. On the bridge, the stability computer displayed an extra 6,324 pounds with no location. That equaled 34 average adults. The weight shifted as passengers moved between rooms, always accumulating where nobody was looking. Our engineer found no fault. Each load cell produced a valid, independent measurement. When he disconnected the network, analog draft marks outside showed the vessel riding 4 inches deeper. Milo gave me a ledger from the Alaska Marine Highway Archives. In 1964, a cannery landslide forced an emergency ferry evacuation from Port Chatham. 34 migrant workers boarded without tickets. The captain omitted them to avoid exceeding his certificate. The ferry arrived safely, but the workers never appeared on any arrival record. Their families later reported them missing. The Fairweather's hull included steel salvaged from that vessel. That was our rational explanation. Undocumented passengers had hidden in the ship's framing, and Milo was exploiting old records to punish me. Then Priya forgot him while he stood beside her. "Who is that?" she asked. The ink spelling Milo's name faded from my log. As the last letter disappeared, the Fairweather heeled 7 degrees. Milo seized a handrail. His boots no longer made sound. The rule emerged through tests. A recorded name held weight in the named body. An omitted person remained physically present, but their mass migrated to the place where they were last remembered. Photographs were insufficient. Digital records failed first. Handwriting lasted longer. A name spoken by someone who truly knew the person lasted longest. The ship was not carrying ghosts. It was carrying the administrative weight of people treated as if they had never boarded. At 2:31, the bow dropped hard. In the car deck, suspension springs compressed on empty vehicles. Wind rose to 40 knots, driving freezing spray over the superstructure. The captain ordered a reduction to 8 knots, but we needed steerage to clear Vanderbilt Reef. I began a complete paper manifest. Passengers lined up by muster station, gave legal names, nicknames, ages, and the name of someone who would notice if they vanished. Crew wrote on charts, napkins, sick bags, anything not dependent on the failing system. Each recorded person lightened the bow. Milo refused to join the line. "You are not here for the cannery workers," I said. No. He had found Aaron James alive in Sitka 6 months after the Kestrel sinking. Aaron had deserted before the voyage. The unidentified 23rd victim was Milo's younger brother, Seth, who had borrowed Aaron's deck pass to earn cash. Milo knew within days. He hid the substitution because Seth's widow would have lost immigration status if authorities learned he worked under another identity. He let me carry blame for erasing a man who had never been aboard. That was the second twist. Milo had not abandoned me out of moral disgust. He had used my guilt as cover. "Why come now?" I asked. He showed me a medical bracelet. Aggressive pancreatic cancer. He had weeks. I wanted one voyage where the ship couldn't pretend I wasn't on it. The Fairweather lurched 12 degrees to starboard. A truck broke its chains and crushed 2 parked cars. The bridge announced flooding in the bow thruster room, but when damage control opened the hatch, the compartment was dry and packed shoulder to shoulder with people wearing 1960s work clothes. There were more than 34. Every erased passenger from every vessel built with the recycled steel had accumulated there. The steel remembered omissions, not deaths. Our third twist was mathematical. Milo added the old names from company ledgers. The ship sank lower. Naming people without anyone truly remembering them gave their displaced weight a fixed location, inside the hull. We were making the instability worse. Only living memory could carry them safely, and no living witness remained. The captain ordered us to jettison vehicles. It would by freeboard, but not correct the shifting center of gravity. We had 28 minutes before the reef. Milo proposed the only test left. Objects attached to genuine memory could bear transferred mass. We asked passengers to bring one item tied to a person they had lost or left behind, then speak that person's full name and a specific true memory over the public address system. A woman held a cracked fishing reel and described her father cursing a tangled king salmon. A child raised a red mitten and told us his sister hated snow. Priya spoke her grandmother's name into a wrench inherited from her. With every account, an object grew heavier. We distributed them low and centered along the car deck as living ballast. The ship slowly righted. Then the bow thruster bulkhead buckled. Hands pushed through seams in the steel. Not rotting hands, not spectral ones. Working hands scarred by hooks, brine, rope, and cold. The omitted passengers were forcing themselves into the load plan. Milo went below carrying the brass tag. I followed with a rescue harness as the deck pitched beneath us. Water burst through the hawse pipe. Chains snapped and memory-laden objects slid toward the open bow space. We clipped them to deck rings while the captain turned into the wind. Priya was pinned by a toolbox that now weighed 600 pounds. I used a hydraulic spreader to free her. Milo reached the buckling bulkhead and shouted Seth's full name. The steel split. Beyond it was not a compartment. It was a crowded night, sea containing the lights of dozens of vanished vessels. Milo's brother stood waist-deep in black water, young and furious. Milo admitted the substitution, the silence, and the years he let another name carry Seth's death. The brass tag grew incandescent in his palm. Seth did not forgive him. He took the tag. The false sea collapsed. Tons of displaced weight struck the deck at once. Milo shoved me clear as a support beam came down. I heard his ribs break. Then the fair weather rose so abruptly my ears popped. We cleared Vanderbilt Reef by 140 yards. At Skagway, medics carried Milo ashore alive. The official incident involved icing, a load cell malfunction, and unsecured cargo. No one mentioned the people inside the bow because every photograph showed an empty compartment. Milo died 11 days later in a Juneau hospice. The apparent resolution was honorable enough for newspapers. He confessed the Kestrel substitution. Seth received his name back. Aaron James was cleared. The Fairweather's steel was scheduled for replacement. But I paid the price of the rule we discovered. Each time a name transferred weight into an object, the speaker surrendered part of the memory attached to it. Passengers remembered facts but lost sensations. A father's laugh, a sister's face, the pressure of a grandmother's hand. I had anchored Milo by telling the ship 43 specific things about him. By spring, I could not picture him. By summer, his voice meant nothing. I read our letters and recognized only my own handwriting. At his memorial, a roomful of strangers watched me stand beside an empty chair reserved for the friend who remembered him longest. I felt embarrassed because I did not know whom they meant. The Fairweather returned to service after repairs. Regulations required us to remove the altered car deck plates, but the shipyard found that cutting them increased the vessel's draft. They remain in place beneath a welded cover. I still serve as chief mate. Before departure, I conduct my own count with pencil and paper. I ask every passenger who would notice their absence. People think it is a sentimental safety ritual. Tonight, Vehicle 17 is empty. Its suspension is compressed, and the scale reads 186 pounds. I know that number matters. The empty Subaru still weighs 186 pounds. Story 4. My laser survey returned a human pulse from 63 feet inside solid Vermont granite. The reading appeared at 6:14 a.m. on Bench 9 of the North Bar Quarry, 72 beats per minute, moving toward me at walking speed. I was a blasting engineer, not a doctor. Our Leica scanner mapped fractures by measuring reflected light, and granite did not possess a pulse. I recalibrated against a steel plate. The Phantom advanced another 4 feet. Then my headset crackled. "Mallory," a man whispered. "Do not drill the white seam." I knew the voice. Adrian Bell and I had shared an apartment at the Colorado School of Mines, slept in trucks between survey jobs, and stopped speaking after he accused my company of building from plans that did not exist. Adrian had entered the quarry the previous night as an architectural historian. Security recorded him walking onto Bench 9. No camera recorded him leaving. At 6:20, the drill crew was due to bore 40 production holes. 12 were already loaded with ANFO from the night shift. State rules prohibited abandoning a charged pattern, and a cracked bench threatened the only access ramp. We could not simply leave without either firing or safely removing 5 tons of explosive. I stopped the drill and called quarry manager Dean Sutter. He ordered me to continue. The stone was contracted for a federal courthouse, with penalties of $90,000 per day. I told him a person might be inside a fracture. "There is no fracture," he said. "Core logs are solid to 200 feet. Adrian spoke again through the headset. "You drew me a room when we were 19. Remember the window? Our first-year drafting professor had asked us to design a refuge. I drew a granite room with one impossible feature, a window looking deeper into the stone. The scanner displayed that room. Its dimensions matched my student plan to the millimeter. Adrian stood inside it, visible as a cloud of reflected points. He held a flashlight, although no shaft connected him to open air. I inserted a bore camera into an existing core hole. At 60 feet, the lens showed polished walls, a desk, and the blue ceramic mug Adrian had chipped in our college kitchen. The camera cable remained surrounded by solid rock according to ultrasound. That was the first undeniable proof. The quarry contained a space that had been designed but never built. I found Adrian's field notebook in his parked car. For 6 years, he had traced North Bar stone into libraries, banks, courthouses, and mausoleums. Architects reported rooms appearing in completed buildings, always rooms removed during design revisions. Janitors entered closets and emerged in canceled stairwells. A child disappeared through a doorway that existed only on a rejected blueprint. Adrian called them refusals, spaces imagined precisely enough to acquire shape, then denied construction. Granite from North Bar stored them. My vulnerability was not abstract. At 19, after Adrian kissed me in our apartment kitchen, I designed the refuge for us. The next morning I panicked, mocked the idea, and let him take the blame when our professor accused us of collaborating. We stayed friends for 12 more years, but I made every intimate truth sound like his invention. On bench 9, the white seam ran through all 12 charged holes. Adrian warned that blasting it would connect hundreds of refusals at once. Sutter insisted Adrian had staged the readings to stop the courthouse contract. That false explanation became convincing when we discovered a portable transmitter beneath Adrian's car and projectors calibrated to spoof LiDAR returns. Sutter smiled. "Your friend is an activist with theater equipment." Then the scanner showed Sutter standing inside the granite room beside Adrian. The real Sutter stood next to me. Inside the stone, his duplicate raised one finger to its lips. This was not an identity copy. Adrian's notes clarified it. Refusals did not recreate people. They stored actions that had been planned but not taken. The figure was Sutter as he had imagined himself entering the room, an unreal decision given space. The distinction did not comfort him. We began removing explosives through the stemming tubes. At hole 7, the vacuum hose vanished past its marked depth. A second hose dropped from empty air above us, pouring white dust. The bench geometry was changing. Survey stakes appeared where canceled quarry plans had placed them in 1911. An unbuilt rail tunnel opened in the wall, complete with tracks that ended at a paper-thin surface. From within came hammers, coughs, and the scrape of lunch pails. Adrian's voice told me the first rule: never enter a space you had once wanted. Desire gave it structural load. The second rule: do not complete an unfinished feature. A door without a handle remained harmless until someone installed one. The third rule was written but crossed out. Every refusal required a real structure to bear its weight. Sutter ignored us. He saw the unreal version of himself unlock a stone vault containing blocks of flawless blue granite. He stepped through the rail tunnel to reach it. The opening sealed behind him. His radio continued transmitting. "There are workers here," he said. "They say the quarry owes them a town." Payroll archives in the office revealed a 1911 settlement called Mercy Row, designed for immigrant stonecutters but never built. The company had collected rent deposits, imported families, and housed them in quarry sheds through winter. 39 died in an influenza outbreak. Their planned houses, school, and church existed only on surveyed paper. Adrian had come to expose the fraud. That was the first reversal. He had not accidentally entered my impossible room. He used it because it was the only refusal connected personally to someone outside. Me. At 8:03, the loaded holes began counting down on detonator diagnostics despite the firing cable being disconnected. We had 41 minutes. I climbed through the unbuilt rail tunnel with a spool of survey line tied around my waist. Behind me, the quarry remained visible as a flat gray rectangle. Inside, distance obeyed intention. Thinking of Adrian brought his room closer. Thinking of an exit moved every door away. I passed a courthouse corridor lined with jury rooms eliminated for budget reasons, a hospital wing whose floors sagged under patients never admitted, and a subway platform built for a city that chose buses. People shaped from unmade choices repeated incomplete motions. A bride approached an altar and vanished before arriving. A surgeon washed hands at a sink with no drain. None looked at me. Adrian sat in our granite refuge. Blood darkened his shirt where unreal glass had passed through him. He admitted the transmitter and projectors were his. He had planned a public demonstration, but the pulse came from Mercy Row, which had learned to use his equipment to make itself measurable. "It doesn't want revenge," he said. "It wants occupancy." The courthouse blast would release enough finished stone to build Mercy Row across real space. Existing bar would be displaced into the refusal. That was the deeper revelation. The ghost town was not haunted by dead laborers. It was an architectural claim seeking the land and materials promised to living families. Sutter appeared carrying a brass door handle. Figures followed him, his unreal choices, hundreds of versions shaped by every plan he had approved and canceled. The town offered an exchange, he said, one rejected place for another. He installed the handle on Adrian's door. The room opened onto dawn in Mercy Row. Granite cottages lined a street where our quarry should have been. Children walked toward a school. In their windows, I saw current bar residents trapped behind stone, pounding without sound. The blast countdown reached 12 minutes. Adrian believed we could load the refusal back into a single unreal structure if someone completed it willingly and then destroyed the real plan. My old refuge had one unfinished element, the window. I used a diamond saw from Adrian's pack to cut the interior wall. Each inch opened onto a different rejected space. Dust filled my respirator. Sutter attacked with the brass handle, driving its spindle through Adrian's hand. Adrian held him against the wall while I finished the square. The window looked into solid granite. That was exactly what I had drawn. All of Mercy Row tilted toward it. Streets folded like plans. Houses elongated into white lines. Sutter's unreal versions dragged him through first. The church, school, workers, and trapped image of bar compressed toward the opening. Adrian could not cross back. He had lived 6 years for this structure. His desire gave it too much load. "Tell the truth once," he said. "Make it enough." I told him I had loved him. Not as a mistake, not as a possibility I had rejected, but as the central fact around which I had designed every empty room since. The refuge became real. Its sudden weight cracked bench 9. I dove through the quarry rectangle as 12 blast holes fired without command. Granite lifted beneath me. The bench collapsed into the unbuilt rail tunnel, sealing the refusal under 180,000 tons of stone. Rescuers found me at 3:40 p.m. with a broken femur and the survey line fused into my palm. North Bar Quarry closed permanently. Sutter and Adrian were listed as missing. Investigators blamed unauthorized explosives and unstable geology. The federal courthouse canceled its stone order. For 9 months, I believed we had saved Bar. I testified, completed physical therapy, and gave Adrian's notebook to the state archives. The town erected a small plaque for him outside the quarry fence. Then the mail began returning. First, letters addressed to Mercy Row arrived at my apartment. Utility bills, school registration forms, a quarry payroll check dated 1912 but printed on modern paper. Next, online maps labeled the closed site as a residential neighborhood containing 39 occupied homes. People in Bar insisted Mercy Row had always existed. They remembered festivals there, classmates from its school, and a church with a granite window looking into stone. No one remembered Adrian. I drove to the quarry. The access road ended at a tidy street of pale cottages. Residents watched from porches as I limped toward number 19. Inside, the blue ceramic mug sat on a kitchen table. A man opened the door. He looked nothing like Adrian, but his right hand bore a fresh wound through the palm. Behind him was the refuge room, now ordinary except for its window. Through the glass, 63 feet inside solid granite, I saw present-day Bar. Cars halted in streets, people frozen mid-step, the entire town stored as a decision reality had revised. The man asked whether I wanted to come inside. I obeyed the first rule and said no. My old survey line tightened beneath the scar in my palm. From behind the granite, Adrian pulled once. Story 5. Daniel Ruiz stopped breathing every time I remembered something we had done together. The first apnea began at 11:18 p.m., while I was attaching an EEG lead above his right eyebrow, and mentioned the night we stole a canoe from Camp Hollowell. Daniel's chest froze. His oxygen saturation fell from 97 to 81% in 22 seconds. I delivered a jaw thrust, called his name, and reached for the emergency bag. The moment I stopped picturing the canoe, he inhaled so violently the nasal cannula came loose. "You remembered the green dock," he whispered. I had not said anything about a dock. I was the senior polysomnographic technologist at a Minneapolis neurology clinic. Daniel was my oldest friend and the last patient in a federally funded overnight study of treatment-resistant parasomnia. We had grown up together, survived Camp Hollowell's brutal scholarship program, and drifted apart when he married. At 38, he had begun waking with bruised feet, dirt beneath his nails, and no memory of leaving bed. His insurer would approve neurological surgery, only if the study captured an event. Leaving early meant waiting at least 6 months. He had already walked onto an interstate once. The clinic's research wing had 7 bedrooms, infrared cameras, cardiac telemetry, and magnetic locks designed to prevent confused patients from wandering. At midnight, a software update failed and sealed the exterior fire doors. Engineering estimated 90 minutes before manual release. We had phones, physicians upstairs, and a crash cart. We were not isolated. That made what happened harder to dismiss. I tested the connection. I recalled Daniel breaking my nose with a softball. He stopped breathing for 11 seconds. I pictured his mother's kitchen without him in it. Nothing happened. I remembered both of us at that table, and his airway closed. The EEG showed sleep spindles, although he was awake. In the control room, another waveform appeared beneath his recording. It matched my patient ID from a sleep study performed 24 years earlier. I did not remember being studied. Daniel did. He had found our names in a class action filing involving Camp Hollowell. The camp was secretly funded by Somnodyne Laboratories, which tested targeted memory reactivation on scholarship children. Counselors played audio cues during slow-wave sleep, then measured whether paired children could transfer learned tasks. "We weren't campers," Daniel said. "We were pairs." He had enrolled tonight because room 7 belonged to the old Hollowell lab before the clinic purchased the building. That was the first twist. His dangerous sleepwalking was not why he came. He intended to wake whatever the experiment had left in us. At 11:47, the intercom played 4 descending piano notes. Every occupied room went quiet. 6 patients stopped breathing simultaneously. I initiated the apnea alarm and called the on-call neurologist, Dr. Helen Creed. She ordered me to administer flumazenol, although no patient had received benzodiazepines. Daniel grabbed my wrist before I injected it. "That was Hollowell's recalled drug," he said. Creed's name appeared on the 2002 class action defense team. The fire doors were not sealed by a failed update. She had triggered containment. We ventilated patients manually until their breathing returned. Each woke with one of my memories. A retired teacher described the wallpaper in my childhood bedroom. A truck driver cried for my dog, Pepper. In room 3, a woman I had never met whispered the secret Daniel told me after his father's arrest. The paired memories were leaking into anyone who crossed slow-wave sleep while the cue played. Daniel showed me a scar behind his ear. Beneath it, imaging had revealed a rice-sized ceramic implant with no power source. Mine lay behind the same ear. I felt its hard edge for the first time. Somnodyne had built a biological backup system. If one child suffered trauma or forgot a trained skill, the partner retained an unconscious copy. The implant synchronized only in room 7, where copper mesh in the walls focused low-frequency magnetic fields. I thought I understood the horror. We were human storage devices. Then Daniel asked about Cassie Moore. The name produced no face. Daniel opened an old camp photograph. 3 children sat in the stolen canoe. He and I were at opposite ends. Between us was a girl whose image had been cut away so completely that trees behind her were missing. "She was our third," he said. "She died during the transfer." Somnodyne erased Cassie from our conscious memories and divided her episodic memory between us. Daniel's parasomnia began because Cassie's final procedural memory, walking from her bunk to room 7, was trying to complete itself. That was the second reversal. The thoughts stopping Daniel's breath were not mine. They were Cassie's memories, using my associations as a route back to him. At 12:06, all 6 patients sat upright. Their eyes remained closed. They removed their own sensors with identical movements, opened their room doors, and walked toward room 7. Magnetic locks released ahead of them. Dr. Creed spoke over the intercom. "Do not interrupt consolidation." She had kept the clinic study alive under a different name. Tonight was her first chance to recombine a fragmented person from multiple hosts. I pulled the fire alarm. It produced the same 4 piano notes. The patients accelerated. Daniel entered room 7 and lay on the central bed. The others formed a circle around him. Their monitors, though disconnected, displayed one continuous EEG spread across 7 screens. Creed arrived in the observation corridor with 2 security officers. She claimed Cassie's transfer could prove memory survived bodily death and cure dementia. She also admitted Daniel had contacted her. He agreed to the procedure. "My wife doesn't remember me," he said through the glass. Early onset Alzheimer's had taken her recognition first. "If this works, Creed can put our years back." His noble motive was the convincing false explanation. Creed's archive exposed the deeper one. Daniel's wife had never been enrolled. The intended recipient was Daniel. Pancreatic cancer gave him months to live, and he planned to overwrite one of the 6 patients with his stored memories afterward. He had chosen a 26-year-old man with no listed family. I confronted him over the room speaker. "You taught me nobody gets to make another person disappear. I learned that from losing Cassie." "No, you learned how to justify it." At 12:14, the shared EEG entered REM. Daniel's oxygen saturation fell. This time remembering nothing did not help. Cassie's pattern had assembled enough of itself to breathe through all 7 bodies, leaving none with a complete autonomic rhythm. We discovered the 3rd rule in the raw data. Memories moved toward attention, but vital functions moved toward familiarity. Cassie recognized Daniel and me. The more we focused on her, the more our nervous systems synchronized. My heart began matching Daniel's monitor. Creed unlocked the observation door to inject the recalled drug. I struck her hand with an oxygen cylinder. A security officer tackled me, but one of the sleepwalking patients caught him with impossible coordination. 6 bodies moved as a single defensive organism. Room 7's copper mesh had an emergency demagnetization circuit. Activating it would erase the implant indexes and strand whatever memories were in transit. It might restore normal breathing. It might leave 7 people without language, identity, or motor control. Daniel begged me not to. Then Cassie spoke through every patient. The canoe tipped because Daniel stood up. The memory returned with physical force. Cold water. Daniel panicking. Cassie trapped beneath the overturned hull. Me reaching her first and choosing Daniel because he was closer. Counselors restarting her heart in room 7, then using us to preserve the neural pattern before oxygen loss destroyed it. Daniel had not brought Cassie back to cure his wife or save himself. He wanted her to decide which of us deserved the life she lost. The central bed restraints snapped. Patients converged on Daniel, hands pressing his face and chest. His heart rate climbed past 190. The crash cart would not cross the threshold. Its wheels locked at the copper seam as if the room had become magnetized, so I stripped the defibrillator from it and carried the unit inside. Creed tried to trigger another cue from her tablet. I tore the speaker cable from the wall, but the descending notes continued through oxygen tubing, bed rails, and even my teeth. The patients rotated Daniel onto his side with flawless clinical technique. They were positioning him for a procedure none of their bodies had learned. On the shared EEG, Cassie's pattern drew the outline of a hand closing. I entered the room and told Cassie the one truth Daniel had omitted. "You pushed him toward me." I remembered her underwater, eyes open, forcing Daniel's jacket into my hand while the canoe pinned her legs. She had chosen him. The 7 bodies stopped. Daniel sobbed. I activated demagnetization. Blue sparks ran through the copper walls. My implant heated like a nail in flame. The shared EEG flattened, and every monitor alarmed. I ventilated Daniel while the physician upstairs manually opened the fire doors. Creed fled toward the stairwell and was arrested with the trial archive in her bag. All 7 patients regained spontaneous breathing. Somnodyne's files led to federal charges and 41 identified former subjects. Daniel survived his cancer surgery after the recording won emergency approval. The young man he had selected woke intact and pressed charges. For 3 weeks, I believed the risk had ended. Then the former Hollowell subjects began having synchronized apnea. They lived in 12 states, used no common device, and had not heard the cue. Their episodes occurred whenever I slept. The demagnetization had not destroyed the network. It made me its clock. My slow-wave sleep now pulls their breathing rhythms toward mine. If I dream of a shared memory, Daniel stops first. If I sleep longer than 4 minutes, oxygen alarms begin across the country. The clinic placed me on modafinil, sodium oxybate microdoses, light therapy, and supervised 20-minute rest intervals during which all 41 subjects use assisted ventilation. 3 teams monitor me around the clock. Daniel visits on Tuesdays. We play cards and avoid the past. He has forgotten Cassie's face, but sometimes his hands fold as if gripping the sides of a canoe. Creed offered to rebuild room 7 and transfer the timing function into a volunteer. There are people willing to do it. I refused. A burden moved to an unnamed body is how this began. I have been awake for 71 hours. At the end of my bed, 41 monitors rise and fall in green lines. Daniel inhales only while my eyes are open. Story 6. The first apple one cut open contained a warm human molar with my friend's initials drilled into the enamel. Jam appeared beneath the pulp in 2 precise dots and a slash, the mark Dr. June Mercer used on dental molds when we were roommates at Washington State. June stood across the inspection table in a white orchard coat. "Bag it," she said. "Don't call Olympia yet." I was an agricultural quarantine officer for Yakima County. At 5:32 a.m., a packing house scanner had detected bone density material in a lot of envy apples bound for Seattle schools. My job was to identify contamination, stop every linked shipment, and determine whether Orchard 88 harbored a regulated pest. 6 refrigerated trucks were scheduled to depart at 8. June owned Orchard 88. We had been inseparable through college, then stopped speaking after I reported her unauthorized rootstock experiments. She lost her research license. I told myself I had protected consumers. She said I had protected a company that stole her work. Now her tooth was inside fruit, while all 32 of her teeth remained in her mouth. I photographed the chain of custody seal and cut a second apple. It contained a curved piece of fingernail painted blue. A third held a tiny lens clouded like a cataract. June locked the packing room doors. "The trees are paying early," she said. I called my supervisor. The line connected, but instead of his voice I heard leaves rubbing together and a child counting backward from 10. June killed the building's Wi-Fi and warned me not to transmit pictures. Orchard 88 used experimental wireless irrigation valves. Any radio burst caused the root zone to contract. I assumed she was hiding criminal biotechnology. Then the concrete floor moved. A ridge traveled beneath us toward the loading dock. Outside, apple trees bent in sequence although the air was still. Their branches pointed toward refrigerated truck 3. June's 14-year-old daughter, Lily, was inside it. We found her unconscious between pallets, body temperature 89 degrees, surgical scar fresh beneath her ribs. The packing list showed no reason for her presence. June admitted Lily had end-stage liver disease. 3 weeks earlier, surgeons transplanted a partial liver grown in Orchard 88. It was functioning perfectly. June had developed a rootstock capable of accepting human stem cells. A graft produced fruit containing excess or damaged tissue from the donor, while cultivating healthy tissue in root nodules. Her tooth in the apple was harmless biological waste. That was the convincing scientific explanation. It failed when Lily woke and called me by June's childhood nickname for me. She described the dorm room where June and I first cultured apple cambium in a coffee mug. Lily had never visited Pullman. June had never told her that story. The orchard was not separating healthy tissue from diseased tissue. It was deciding what counted as waste. I initiated a quarantine by pulling the manual fire alarm, which sealed loading gates without using radio. The 6 trucks remained trapped, but 18 workers were still in the orchard. June led me to the propagation greenhouse. Beneath each sapling sat a medical bag labeled with a person's name, blood type, and contribution. Farm workers had traded samples for cash. Patients had paid for organs. Alongside liver and kidney cultures were bags marked grief, stutter, craving, memory, traits June believed the rootstock could remove. I found one labeled Sloan Price, collected in 2006. June admitted our first college culture had used my blood after I cut my palm. The rootstock in Orchard 88 descended from it. My immune system was why human grafts did not reject. That was the first twist. I had not merely exposed June's project. I had created its biological key. A worker pounded on the greenhouse glass. His left arm had become pale and rigid beneath the skin. Bark split through his fingertips. When we pulled him inside, roots withdrew from his boots carrying red fluid. The orchard was calling in its donors. June showed me handwritten rules collected over 9 years. Never graft from the same person twice. Never allow fallen fruit to touch irrigation water. Never remove an organ before the tree sheds the matching waste. Most important, every gift required tissue from the original universal donor at harvest. June had hidden that last rule from patients. She brought me to Orchard Block C. 32 trees grew in a circle around an empty planting hole. Their trunks contained outlines of human ribs. Tags listed scheduled transplant recipients, including 6 children. "I need 1 blood draw," she said. The roots curled around my boots. I agreed, but filled 2 tubes. Into the second, I mixed a fluorescent systemic fungicide tracer. When June injected my blood into the irrigation port, ultraviolet lamps revealed the root network extending beyond Orchard 88 beneath neighboring farms, a canal, and the county road. This was not 32 trees. It was one organism covering 11 square miles. My supervisor arrived at the gate with state police and ordered an aerial fumigation. June panicked. The fungicide would rupture every human graft simultaneously, killing Lily and transplant recipients already connected through their organs. The roots broke the packing house foundation before I could stop the order. Trees pulled themselves inches at a time through soil. Refrigerated trucks tipped as roots entered their floor drains. Inside truck 3, apples split open and began speaking through structures made from tongues, teeth, and vibrating palate. They recited donor consent forms. One voice was mine, agreeing in 2006 that all resulting plant material belonged to North Valley Biologics. The corporation I thought I had protected held the patent. It had funded June secretly after her license was revoked, then planned to destroy Orchard 88 once the first organs proved viable. The aerial fumigation was not containment. It was evidence disposal. That was the second reversal. June was both perpetrator and captive. Her illegal clinic had become a corporate human trial. At 7:18, the crop plane crossed the ridge. We had 12 minutes before it reached Block C. June proposed flooding the orchard with canal water. It would dilute the chemical but spread root fragments into the Yakima River. I proposed burning the irrigation hub to isolate grafted organs from the network. Her records warned that separation forced each organ to choose between host and tree. "Lily may die," she said. "If we spread this, thousands become donors without consent." She struck me with a pruning bar and dragged me toward the empty planting hole. Roots opened around it like fingers. At the bottom lay the original coffee mug, its WSU logo visible through knots of tissue. June intended to plant me as permanent donor stock. Lily stopped her. The girl drove a forklift into the irrigation manifold, tearing pipes from concrete. Clear nutrient solution sprayed 30 feet. Roots seized the machine, folding its steel guard inward. I pulled Lily free while June cut at the roots with her pruning bar. The crop plane began its first pass. Droplets turned the top leaves black. Across the orchard, workers collapsed as grafted tissue tried to return to the root network. Lily's abdomen opened along her transplant scar. Green-white fibers drew her toward Block C. I reached the emergency propane frost system and opened every valve. June understood. She climbed the irrigation tower, using a flare to ignite the gas above the trees. Flame rolled across the canopy. The orchard screamed in the voices of everyone it had treated. Burning roots ruptured beneath the access road, opening trenches filled with pale grafts shaped like unfinished organs. One worker fell waist-deep beside a pulsing lung and could not free his boot. I reversed the forklift, hooked his safety harness to the mast, and tore him out as the trench closed. The crop plane banked for another pass. Lily climbed onto the propane controls and held 2 valves open after heat blistered her palms. Across Block C, fruit swelled to grapefruit size, fell, and split into wet collections of things donors had begged the orchard to remove. I drove the forklift through the burning manifold. Pipes burst one after another, severing sectors before the fumigant reached them. June remained on the tower, cutting the main route as it climbed her legs. "The trees didn't take my tooth," she shouted. "I gave them Lily's memories of me." That was the third twist. June had been removing herself from her daughter, so Lily would suffer less if the transplant failed. The orchard labeled June's body as waste because June had taught it that her relationship to Lily was disposable. The tower collapsed into Block C. Fire entered the root network. Rows of trees dropped simultaneously, pulled underground as buried tissue contracted. The original planting hole closed over June. I carried Lily through the gate while state police dragged workers clear. Behind us, Orchard 88 sank nearly 6 feet, leaving a smoking basin. Lily's transplant survived. So did 11 other recipients. North Valley Biologics executives were indicted after June's greenhouse records became public. The school shipments were incinerated unopened. Officials declared the rootstock eradicated. For several months, the ending seemed almost merciful. June was presumed dead, but Lily remembered enough to mourn her. I visited the girl weekly and testified that her mother had saved lives as well as endangered them. Then rejection markers appeared in every surviving recipient. Not rejection of their organs, rejection of their original bodies. Lily's fingerprints changed first, whorls flattening into leaf vein patterns. Another recipient shed diseased lung tissue by coughing up red petals. A man with a grafted kidney stopped producing human antibodies and became immune to apple mosaic virus. The organs had chosen the tree. Because my blood enabled every graft, physicians asked me to provide marrow to stabilize the patients. I refused until Lily's liver began failing. One donation became 4, then 12. Each time, something of mine appeared in produce harvested elsewhere. A cherry pit containing my childhood filling. A pear with a strip of my tattoo beneath its skin. None came from Yakima. The root network had reached commercial stock years before we burned Orchard 88. My supervisor insists these are frauds. Federal agencies cannot order a nationwide orchard destruction based on photographs and genetic matches from anonymous packages. I no longer need photographs. Last month, I cut my hand while cooking. The wound produced clear sap. X-rays show narrow wooden structures replacing the bones of my fingertips. The transplant team calls it adaptive calcification and wants more samples. Lily calls me Aunt Sloan now. She does not remember June at all. Yesterday, she brought me an apple from her school lunch. Its flesh contained a small blue eye that blinked when she said my name. By spring, my left hand will be ready to harvest. Story 7. The condemned elevator opened on the 13th floor, although the building had only 12 and its power had been disconnected for 9 years. My inspection lamp showed a tiled corridor extending beyond the doors. At the far end, my old friend Tasha Green held up a red service tag. "Cal," she said, "do not let them demolish the shaft." The doors closed before I could answer. I was a licensed elevator inspector for Detroit's buildings department. The Haviland Tower had been vacant since an electrical fire in 2017. I entered at 7 a.m. to verify that all 6 cars rested at the pit before demolition charges were connected at noon. Tasha had trained beside me in the union apprenticeship. She was fearless in shafts, better with relay logic than anyone I knew, and furious when I testified that her maintenance error caused the Haviland fire. Her license was revoked. She disappeared from city records 4 months later. Car 6 now rested level with the lobby, its doors open. The feeder cables were cut and tagged, yet its floor indicator displayed 13 in dim amber segments. I called the demolition superintendent. He gave me 45 minutes to prove an unsafe condition. After that, delaying the implosion would cost the city $240,000 and leave an unstable facade beside an active rail line. My practical goal was to locate Tasha and secure the car. My personal weakness was the fire report. I had accepted the controller manufacturer's analysis without examining a melted relay Tasha insisted was counterfeit. 3 custodians died above the fire floor while elevators bypassed their calls. I climbed to the roof machine room with demolition electrician Bo Landry. All hoist cables for car 6 descended into the shaft. Its brake was mechanically set. The motor windings registered room temperature. Then a call bell rang beneath us. The annunciator panel showed requests from floors 3, 5, 8, and 13. Each call corresponded to an emergency report from the 2017 fire. The last belonged to custodian Leon Watts, who radioed from a floor absent from every blueprint. Bo supplied temporary control power. Car 6 rose without its motor turning. The counterweight descended, dragging the car upward through a brake strong enough to hold 16,000 pounds. At floor 12, the normal landing doors passed beneath us. Above them waited another set. They opened onto Tasha's corridor. She pulled us out before the car continued into darkness. Floor 13 contained 59 metal doors, each labeled with an address. I recognized buildings demolished across Detroit: hotels, hospitals, factories, apartment towers. Behind every door was an elevator landing with a lit call button and no arriving car. Tasha looked real, hungry, and older by 9 years. She explained that Haviland's controller used salvaged relays from the demolished Crown Motor Complex. Some came from elevator systems where passengers had pressed emergency calls that no operator answered. Each ignored request remained in the relay's magnetic state. Reusing the parts connected those unfinished weights. "A call is a contract," she said. "The car either arrives or the building owes a landing." When enough ignored calls accumulated, the controller made floor 13 to hold them. That was the first twist. Tasha had not caused the fire. Counterfeit relays carried decades of unresolved commands and sent Car 6 to answer calls in buildings that no longer existed. She led us to the Haviland fire landing. Smoke still floated motionless near the ceiling. 3 custodians stood by the elevator, alive in the instant before the doors should have opened. They did not see us. Tasha had entered after the fire to retrieve the relay and became trapped when the city disconnected power. She survived because no biological time passed between a call and its answer. 9 years out there, she said, maybe 9 hours here. Bo wanted to leave immediately. He pressed the call button. Car 6 arrived. Its doors opened not onto Haviland, but the nursery floor of St. Anne's Hospital, demolished in 1982. Empty bassinets rolled past under emergency lights. A nurse stood beside the elevator holding an infant and pressing a dead button. Bo stepped back. The doors stayed open. Tasha said we had summoned the oldest unanswered call attached to him. His mother had delivered a stillborn daughter at St. Anne's. The nurse requested an elevator for the morgue, but a strike delayed it 5 hours. The car required Bo to complete the trip. He refused. The landing began tilting toward the shaft. That established the second rule. Anyone who pressed a button on floor 13 became responsible for the call it returned. The third was worse. If the caller refused, the unpaid trip transferred to the nearest occupied building. Our radios erupted with reports from the rail station next door. Elevators that were opening onto smoke-filled floors. Bo entered the car. Tasha and I followed because no one should ride an unknown shaft alone. We descended past numbers that were not floors but years. 1999, 1982, 1967. The car stopped at St. Anne's. Bo carried the infant from the nurse to a basement gurney. As he set the bundle down, it became a yellowed hospital chart. The car registered one completed call. Back on 13, one metal door vanished. I thought we could prevent the demolition by answering every call. Tasha showed me the ledger inside the controller room. More than 14,000 requests remained. Some dated to hand-operated lifts in the 1890s. The demolition countdown outside read 93 minutes. Tasha's plan was to remove the master relay and install it in an active municipal tower where cars could gradually service the debt. I recognized the proposed building, City Hall. You want to put this under thousands of employees. I want the city to answer what it ignored. Her motive sounded like justice. It was also the convincing false explanation. In her tool bag, I found 6 red tags bearing names of officials involved in her license hearing, including mine. She had selected specific, unanswered emergencies for each of us. Tasha had spent 9 years planning sentences. Before I could confront her, Bo inspected the master relay and found the manufacturer's stamp beneath soot. It was genuine. The counterfeit part in my fire report had been swapped after the incident. I remembered who brought the evidence bag to the hearing, Tasha. She admitted she replaced the relay to prove the manufacturer used substandard components elsewhere. She expected a recall, not blame. Her fraud gave the company an excuse to dismiss the entire failure as maintenance negligence. That was the second reversal. Tasha was innocent of causing the fire, but guilty of burying the only evidence that could explain it. The building shook. Demolition crews had begun drilling access holes, unaware we were inside. Every call button illuminated. Floor 13 lengthened in both directions. Doors opened on hundreds of abandoned landings. Waiting people turned toward us. They were not ghosts. Each was a preserved expectation, human attention held at its most helpless. Car 6 could answer one final priority call before overload. The ledger presented 3. The Haviland custodians, the rail station passengers currently in danger, or the first recorded call from 1891. Completing the first might release Tasha. Completing the second would save living people. Completing the oldest might collapse the entire accrued system in chronological order. Tasha tagged the Haviland call. I tore off her tag and selected the rail station. She hit me with a brake wrench. We fought across the controller room as doorways slid past us. Bo wedged a governor rope around the master relay. Tasha kicked him into the shaft, but I caught his harness. The demolition siren began outside. Car 6 opened. Through it, I saw 30 commuters trapped inside a rail station elevator filling with smoke. I climbed onto the car roof, released the manual brake, and used the governor rope to connect both cars through floor 13. Their counterweights fought each other. Steel cables shrieked. The Haviland car dropped. The station car rose. Tasha grabbed the master relay as it tore from the panel. Every preserved landing began collapsing. She could let go and come with us. Instead, she inserted my red tag into the relay slot. The car stopped at the Haviland fire. The 3 custodians entered. Leon Watts looked at Tasha and said, "You took your time." She joined them. I severed the governor rope. Car 6 fell 12 floors while its emergency brake engaged in bursts. Bo and I hit the pit hard enough to fracture vertebrae. Above us, floor 13 compressed into a line of amber light and vanished. The fall did not pass floor numbers in order. At 7, the doors opened for half a second onto a burning factory elevator where women beat at a scissor gate. At 4, floodwater struck the car from a hospital basement. At 2, a child's mitten caught between our doors. I kept the dead man switch depressed while Bo pulled each obstruction clear, because an interrupted landing would attach another call to us. When the safety jaws finally bit the rails, thousands of bells sounded above, then stopped from oldest to newest. In the pit, the buffer springs continued compressing after the car stopped. Someone above was adding weight, one unanswered passenger at a time. Bo crawled through oily water to the inspection switch while I hammered the release lever with Tasha's wrench. The springs rebounded only when I said all 3 custodians' names without looking at my report. Demolition was canceled with 4 minutes remaining. Rail firefighters rescued all 30 commuters. Investigators found the swapped relay in the pit and reopened the Haviland case. The manufacturer paid settlements, and Tasha's license was posthumously restored even though no proof showed she was dead. That seemed like the proper ending. Truth recovered, debt acknowledged, friend redeemed imperfectly. But modern elevators log every hall call. 3 months after Haviland, the department found a new data field appearing across unrelated controllers. Waiting since. Most values last seconds. Some count years. City code now requires inspectors to verify that no landing call remains active after a building is vacated. We cannot explain why clearing the field causes cars elsewhere to miss floors, so we do not clear it. I return to work wearing a spinal brace. On every inspection, I bring Tasha's restored license in my pocket. Elevators occasionally open on floors I did not select. I remain inside and let the doors close. Yesterday, City Hall's express car rose above its highest landing. The indicator displayed my name. When the doors opened, Tasha stood beside 3 custodians beneath a red exit sign. She did not threaten me or ask me to enter. She simply pressed the call button and waited to see whether I would answer. Tasha's elevator is still waiting at 13. Story 8. At 4:08 p.m., the county's debt owed my client $2,317,640, and my old friend had signed every check. I was a forensic accountant sent to Hatteras Island to audit the Shoreline Rest Funeral Trust. The trust was legally required to keep prepaid burial funds separate from operating money. Instead, 613 electronic payments had moved from deceased clients' accounts into a company called Hours Returned LLC. Each transfer was authorized by Noah Caldwell. Noah and I had survived business school together, shared our first disastrous apartment, and built a small accounting firm after graduation. He left 12 years ago when I approved a county contract he called legalized theft. I became a partner. He became, according to every database I checked, unemployed. At Shoreline Rest, he opened the records room door before I knocked. "You have 43 minutes to balance it," he said. He had gray in his beard and ink stains on both hands. Behind him, shelves held tied charts, death certificates, and leather ledgers swollen with damp. My client, funeral director Miriam Pike, had warned me that a tropical system might close the bridge by evening. That was inconvenient, not terrifying. The real deadline was the Federal Reserve's 5 p.m. settlement window. If I did not freeze the transfers, another $900,000 would clear from protected accounts. I showed Noah the transaction list. Those people cannot authorize payments. They authorize the debt while living. He opened a ledger. Every page contained a person's name, an unpaid obligation, and a conversion rate. 20 minutes stolen from a dock worker's time card equaled $48. A year withheld from a wrongfully imprisoned woman equaled $1.4 million. Besides settled entries, dates of death had moved backward. Miriam entered carrying 3 cups of coffee. She looked 80 that morning. Now she looked 60. "The payments are working," she said. I assumed fraud enhanced by forged medical files. Then my phone displayed a voicemail from my mother dated next Thursday. In it, she said I had missed Noah's funeral. The ledger showed Noah Caldwell, -6 days. He explained that Shoreline Rest had kept a tied ledger since 1899. Families paid money for burial, but the island collected other debts: unpaid labor, stolen land, broken promises, years spent waiting for courts or employers. Once a debtor died, the obligation did not vanish. It entered the groundwater beneath the cemetery. Money could represent time closely enough to transfer it. Hours Returned was converting financial restitution into literal lifespan. That was the first impossible proof. When I canceled a $1,200 test payment to a deceased school custodian, Miriam, aged 14 months, in front of me. The skin beneath her eyes folded. Her coffee cup slipped as arthritis twisted her fingers. The transaction had repaid hours Miriam's father stole by falsifying the custodian's time cards. Canceling it returned the debt to his surviving heir. My practical goal changed. I had to stop theft without accelerating innocent people into graves. My vulnerability was buried in the county contract that ended my friendship with Noah. Our firm privatized storm shelter reservations. Residents without credit cards were placed on a manual waiting list. During Hurricane Cora, the county closed access before clerks entered 41 paper applications. 7 people died. Noah had found the applications. I told him correcting the record would bankrupt our new firm and expose the county. I signed an audit stating no valid requests were omitted. At 4:22, seawater seeped beneath the records room door, although the building stood 9 feet above tide. It flowed uphill toward the ledgers. Noah said the settlement imbalance was attracting a reckoning tide. If the accounts did not balance by 5, the island would receive every unpaid year at once. Buildings would age, dunes erode, bodies experience decades in minutes. The bridge closed. Phone lines died. I could reach the bank only through a hardwired terminal in the embalming room. I traced the $2.3 million. It had not gone to Noah or Miriam. It was distributed in small payments to descendants, former employees, and people released after wrongful convictions. Whenever restitution reached a living beneficiary, an equivalent amount of time left the responsible family line. The system looked brutal but mathematically consistent. Then I found 6 recipients with no historical connection to the debts. All were children receiving experimental cancer treatment at a Raleigh hospital. Noah had added them. His 8-year-old son was among them. That was the first reversal. Noah was not merely administering old obligations. He was laundering lifespan into children the ledger had never named. You would do it if it were your child, he said. Not with strangers' years. You already did. You just called them applicants. At 4:31, the building aged 12 years in one breath. Wallpaper yellowed. Copper pipes greened. Miriam's hair grew to her waist, then shed onto the floor. Outside, live oaks thickened and split the parking lot. I audited faster. The conversion rate was not based on dollars alone. It multiplied by acknowledgement. A publicly admitted debt cost less time than a concealed one. Our storm shelter liability had compounded for 12 years because my report denied it. Noah had invited me to confess and reduce the balance. That was his convincing motive. In the embalming room, I found the 7 original shelter applications sealed in plastic. Each applicant's signature matched entries in the Tide ledger. One was Noah's wife, Elise. She and their son had not died in Hurricane Cora. They entered a shelter after Noah bribed a clerk to replace another family on the list. The excluded family lost 2 children. Noah's son now had cancer because the ledger was collecting the stolen shelter years from his body. The children in Raleigh were not receiving stolen lifespan. Noah was distributing his son's debt among other sick children, so no single body paid enough to die. That was the second reversal, and it made his crime harder to judge. At 4:39, waves struck the cemetery from below. Coffins rose through grass intact, not opened, each displaying a brass balance plate. Numbers spun upward. Miriam revealed the deeper rule. Shoreline rest was founded by families who profited from wrecking ships with false lights. The ledger did not create justice. It protected descendants by assigning a cash value to harms that could never truly be repaid. Every settlement reduced a human life to an account. The tide was not demanding balance. It was coming to end accounting. If I let the 5 o'clock settlement complete, hours returned would expand nationally, and investors already held contracts securitizing future restitution. Human lifespan would become a tradable asset. If I froze it, the accumulated island debt would mature immediately. Noah offered a third option. The ledger allowed an auditor to assume disputed liabilities personally. My professional signature could consolidate 125 years of hidden debt into one life. You have maybe 40 good years, he said. It will take those first. That leaves 85. The island pays the remainder. We argued while water filled the embalming room. Drawers opened and released sheets that swam like pale fish. The terminal clock read 4:47. I began entering corrected transactions, naming each debtor and each harm in plain language. Noah read beneficiaries aloud. Miriam stamped death certificates void when the restored time pushed a recorded death forward. Outside, cemetery stones weathered into sand. The building's joists softened. Noah aged as his unauthorized transfers reversed, beard white, spine bending, hands trembling over the ledger. At 4:55, his son called through the terminal speaker. The boy's latest scan showed his tumor shrinking. Noah stopped reading. Keeping those transfers would save 12 children and create the lifespan market. Reversing them would return the debt to his son. He placed his hand on the ledger and assigned every unauthorized credit to himself. His body aged past recognition in seconds. I could have let him finish. Instead, I signed as co-auditor. The debt divided between us. Pain entered my bones like ice. My hair struck my face as it grew. Teeth loosened. Still, I keyed the final disclosure. County and harbor ledger are not settled. Value cannot extinguish harm. At 4:59, Miriam pulled the main breaker. The Federal Reserve transfer failed. The reckoning tide hit. Water rose through the floor carrying voices that spoke not accusations but exact quantities. Shifts, acres, meals, appeals, birthdays. The ledgers dissolved. Coffins opened outside, releasing no bodies. Only contracts, deeds, payroll slips, and court orders. Paper filled the air like seabirds. One wave carried the original storm shelter applications past me. I caught all 7 against a preparation table and read the names while Noah held the table upright. Each signature became warm beneath my fingers. Beyond the window, 7 door-shaped openings appeared in the rain, showing the moments those families had been turned away. I wanted to close them. Instead, I watched every minute we had priced as a statistic. The water did not allow remorse to become abstraction. It made us spend the full time witnessing. Noah and I dragged Miriam to the roof as shoreline rest collapsed. Across the island, hotels aged into ruins and rebuilt themselves in earlier forms. Bulkheads vanished. An ancestral village emerged where vacation homes had stood. Then the tide withdrew. Noah survived, physically 89. I survived at something near 70. His son's tumor returned but responded to ordinary treatment and remains in remission. The apparent resolution satisfied no one. Federal investigators charged us with wire fraud, then dropped the case when the electronic transfers vanished from bank archives. Descendants retained the money already paid. The county published the shelter applications and apologized to the families. Hatteras maps now include communal land absent from every modern deed. Courts cannot determine ownership because the oldest records have become blank wherever they conflict with remembered use. The tide ledger is gone, but its balances did not disappear. I can see them. Every person carries a number above the left wrist, visible only to me. It changes when they take someone's time or return it. Employers glow with minutes. Hospitals pulse with years. Children display debts inherited from names they have never heard. Noah's number is 0. Mine reads -85 years, 3 months, and 6 days. Doctors say my organs are those of a 72-year-old woman, though I am 41. I age normally now, which means the ledger did not collect the remainder. It scheduled it. This morning I received a county death certificate with my name, today's date, and a blank line labeled interest. The tide reaches my porch at 5 o'clock. Story 9. The murdered defendant vanished from the courtroom transcript while he was still sitting 10 feet from me. At 9:17 a.m., Marcus Bell said, "I was not in that house." My stenotype registered every keystroke. The real-time display produced, "I was not in that." Then Marcus's name disappeared from the caption header. Judge Weller continued examining a warrant as if the defense table were empty. The prosecutor frowned at her notes. 2 deputies looked past Marcus while he stood and shouted. Only Evan Cho reacted. Evan had been my best friend through high school debate, court reporting school, and 5 years of underpaid legal work. He became a public defender. I became an official reporter in Fulton County Superior Court. We stopped speaking after I certified a transcript that undermined his appeal in a police shooting case. He said 43 seconds of testimony were missing. My audio proved the microphone had gone silent. Now he represented Marcus, and he had specifically requested me. Evan wrote Marcus Bell on a yellow pad and held it up. The judge blinked. "Why is your client standing?" Recognition returned across the room. I checked my equipment. Battery 82%. Internal clock synchronized. Redundant audio running. Georgia procedure required a verbatim record in a potential death penalty case. If I left the courtroom without judicial relief, I could invalidate the hearing and face contempt. My practical goal was to preserve the record until a replacement reporter arrived. My vulnerability was simpler. I had built my identity on being exact, and Evan was the only person who had ever proved I might not be. The second omission occurred during the medical examiner's testimony. "The victim had a prior fracture of the hyoid," she said. My screen omitted prior. The prosecutor immediately asked about the fracture caused during this homicide. Even the doctor accepted the changed premise. Evan objected. The word objection appeared as O. The courtroom doors locked. Judge Weller ordered the hearing to continue under security protocol. Cell signals failed inside the paneled walls. My emergency text to the clerk's office returned with no recipient. Evan slipped me a handwritten note. "Use paper. Do not backspace." He had researched the previous reporter assigned to courtroom 4C, Alma Reese. Personnel records showed she retired in 1978. Pension records showed she was still actively employed. Her desk remained in a sealed transcript vault below the courthouse. During recess, Evan and I entered the vault using his subpoena key. Shelves held bound transcripts from trials never listed on any docket. Names were cut from page after page, leaving grammatically perfect gaps. Alma sat at a stenotype beneath a green lamp. She appeared about 60, though her employment file placed her birth in 1912. Her fingers moved continuously. Blank paper fed through the machine. "Court is never adjourned," she said. Her stenotype contained 22 keys made from dark brass. Mine was a modern plastic model, but its real-time software used a dictionary file named Reese 4C. Alma explained that Courtroom 4C had been built over a Reconstruction-era claims tribunal. Freed families testified there about stolen wages, children, and land. A clerk shortened their accounts to fit official forms. Whatever could not be entered into the record lost legal force, and sometimes disappeared from public recognition altogether. The brass keys had been cast from the tribunal's type. "A court reporter does not write what happened," Alma said. "She decides what can be proven to have happened." That was the first undeniable rule. Handwriting temporarily anchored an omitted fact. Spoken words faded. Certified transcripts made the omission permanent. The second rule emerged when I wrote Alma's name. The green lamp dimmed, and decades struck her body at once. She aged, then steadied when I tore the page in half. Recognition had a cost. Restoring one omitted identity required space in the active record, and the record tried to remove another. Evan admitted he knew. His younger sister Mina had testified against a police gang 10 years earlier. The official transcript omitted her name under a witness protection order. Within months, her school records, credit history, and birth certificate vanished. She remained physically alive, but became legally unplaceable. Hospitals refused insurance. Border agents detained her as an unidentified person. Evan believed Courtroom 4C could restore her. That was the first reversal. He had not requested me to help Marcus. He needed the reporter who certified Mina's last appeal. Back upstairs, the hearing resumed. Marcus wrote that the victim's old hyoid fracture proved someone had strangled her years before. He believed that person was Judge Weller, her former husband. The judge read the note and ordered deputies to seize it. My audio emitted 43 seconds of silence. I recognized the duration from Evan's failed police shooting appeal. Judge Weller had used omissions for years. He did not control the mechanism completely, but he knew that speaking a fact while I corrected or muted the record could remove it from legal reality. The missing testimony in Evan's old case had named Weller as the judge who approved an illegal raid. That was the second reversal. My error was not mechanical. Weller had instructed the clerk to push a firmware patch into my stenotype during the hearing. I disconnected real-time output and switched to paper mode. The machine kept translating. Words appeared on my paper that no one had spoken. Mother. Lot 18. $420. North boundary at the pecan tree. The buried tribunal was entering its unfinished claims. Spectators filled the gallery, though security had admitted only 16 people. Men and women in work clothes occupied every bench, waiting to be named. They were not apparitions. Dust compressed beneath their shoes. Their body heat raised the room temperature. Weller called an emergency recess. The courtroom replied, denied, in 31 voices. Evan produced a handwritten petition naming Mina and asked me to read it into the official record. Doing so could restore her. Alma's warning meant someone else would be removed, most likely Marcus, because his identity was already unstable. Evan said Marcus had agreed. Marcus shook his head. That was the convincing lie. Evan had never told him the cost. The judge reached for my paper roll. Marcus tackled him. Deputies drew weapons, but when I stopped writing deputy beside their badge numbers, they looked at their uniforms in confusion and lowered their guns. The power of the record was spreading through my choices. I could erase Weller, restore Mina, and free Marcus with a few strokes. I also understood the deeper trap. Every correction would confirm that human existence depended on the reporter's wording. The tribunal did not want justice. It wanted a complete record, something no finite court could produce. The unrecorded always exceeded the page. At 10:46, cracks opened in the floor. Beneath us, hundreds of voices recited claims. Desks tilted toward the gaps. The stenotype pulled paper so fast its motor smoked. Alma entered carrying bound volumes. She had kept the court stable for 48 years by continuously substituting herself for omitted names. Each time someone vanished from a record, she surrendered a year of her future to preserve their physical life. I am out of years, she said. Weller seized the deputy's pistol and fired at Evan. Marcus moved first. The bullet entered his shoulder, and his blood struck my paper. Every missing occurrence of his name reappeared in red. The gallery surged forward. Weller fled toward chambers, but doors opened onto scenes from his suppressed hearings. Defendants, witnesses, and families confronted him at every threshold. The prosecutor tried to declare a mistrial. Her words emerged from my machine as my trial, and every suppressed case assigned to Weller appeared beneath her name. She stared at the stack and began reading docket numbers aloud, restoring defendants one by one. Each restored name displaced a piece of courtroom furniture. The jury box vanished first, then the seal behind the bench. People stood where official symbols had been. For once, the room contained more human evidence than institutional space. Evan placed Mina's petition on my stand. I made my choice. Instead of naming individuals, I read the court's omissions themselves. The 43 silent seconds, the erased adjective prior, the missing property descriptions, the anonymous witnesses, the claims compressed beyond recognition. I stated that the record was incomplete and could not be certified. The mechanism fought me. My tongue numbed. Letters vanished from the keys. Evan and Alma repeated each sentence while Marcus held the paper roll against his wound, marking it with undeniable physical evidence. Judge Weller shouted, "Strike all of it." I wrote his command exactly. The court struck him. His robe fell empty, but his body did not disappear. He remained visible, screaming, while law books ceased mentioning his appointment, his orders, or his authority. The doors no longer recognized his security badge. Alma slammed the brass stenotype shut. The floor sealed. Marcus received medical treatment and was later acquitted when the restored hyoid evidence exposed Weller. Federal investigators reopened 28 cases. Mina's birth certificate and school history returned. Weller was prosecuted as a private citizen impersonating a judge because no government archive admitted employing him. For several months, I considered that resolution. Then the transcript from courtroom 4C appeared in the public docket. It was 19,442 pages long. Every person affected by the hearing had a complete entry except Evan. He still existed. I met him at a diner 2 weeks after Mina came home. He remembered our debates, the appeals, and the moment the bullet passed him. But his bar number belonged to no one. Mina did not recognize him. His fingerprints returned to Marcus Bell because Marcus's blood had occupied the record where Evan's identity should have been. Alma explained that Evan had spent years defining himself only through restoring his sister. When the court granted that claim, it found no independent statement of who he was. We tried handwriting his name. Each attempt erased another fact about him. A childhood address disappeared. His reflection stopped appearing on security cameras. The scar on my knee from our bicycle crash faded when I wrote that he had been there. Evan asked me to stop. He lives in my spare room. He cannot work, sign a lease, receive benefits, or legally consent to treatment. I buy his food and record one new fact about him each day in a notebook he keeps on his body. This morning, he woke with chest pain. At the emergency room, a nurse looked directly at him and called security because I demanded treatment for an unregistered patient. The waiting room television covered Judge Weller's appeal. The anchor described a victimless administrative anomaly. Evan sat beneath the screen, hand pressed to his heart, while the admissions system recognized the empty chair beside him. I am writing his name now. The law recognizes the chair. Story 10. With 2 outs in the 9th, the tornado sirens began announcing the names of boys who had never played for our school. Elias Boone, the siren said across Carver Field. Samuel Pike. Thomas Reed. The scoreboard added 3 runs to the home team. I was calling the Oklahoma Regional Championship live from the press box. 900 people filled the aluminum stands. Radar showed a violent rotation 21 miles southwest, but the county emergency manager had not ordered shelter. The game stood tied 4-4. On the infield, groundskeeper Jonah Reed dropped his rake. Jonah had been my best friend and catcher through high school. We shared buses, bruises, and a plan to broadcast baseball together. I got the college scholarship after scouts blamed him for dropping a 3rd strike that ended our final season. He took a maintenance job and stopped speaking to me. Now the siren had called his grandfather's name. Jonah climbed the press box stairs and shut off my microphone. "Do not announce the lineup," he said. The public address console was already dead. The names came through the outdoor warning system, which used a county radio network 6 miles away. Below us, players took their positions for the final out. None reacted to the sirens. Spectators checked phones, but the school Wi-Fi displayed only a box score dated May 20th, 1957. Carver High had supposedly forfeited that day's game because its bus broke down. The historical lineup contained the 9 names the sirens were announcing. My practical goal was to move the crowd into the reinforced shelter beneath the west stands before the storm arrived. The problem was procedural. Stadium policy prohibited opening the shelter during play without an official warning because its only entrance crossed the home dugout and could trigger a crush. Calls to emergency management returned a recorded baseball commentary in my own voice. I went on our battery-powered radio feed and ordered evacuation anyway. The exits locked. Every gate chain tightened at once, though no staff member touched them. On the scoreboard, the word out appeared beneath Exit A. Jonah told me the first rule. Every out called during the 1957 game had sealed an exit. 3 outs would close all gates and the shelter. How do you know? He showed me his grandfather's scorebook. Carver's 1957 team consisted of black players from a separate vocational school temporarily merged after a fire. The superintendent scheduled them against an all-white rival, then canceled transportation when donors objected. The boys walked 11 miles to Carver Field as a tornado approached. They reached the stadium and found the shelter locked. Officially, no deaths occurred there. County records listed 9 unidentified storm casualties 2 miles east. I had heard none of this despite spending my career reciting school history. At 6:38 p.m., the current pitcher threw strike 3. I refused to call it. The umpire did. The scoreboard remained at 2 outs. The system recognized only the broadcast record. That was the first undeniable rule. At Carver Field, a play became official when an announcer gave it language. The current game continued in suspended reality. The batter walked back to the box, confused. The pitcher threw again. Wind bent the foul poles toward center. Jonah had discovered his grandfather's scorebook beneath the shelter during drainage repairs. It contained 8 innings and 2 outs. The final page was blank except for the 9 names. He believed completing the 1957 broadcast would open the shelter. That was why he had invited me to call tonight's game after 20 years of silence. Our reunion was not accidental. The second twist came from the radar feed. The tornado was no longer moving northeast with the storm. Its velocity signature traced the baseball diamond, circling each base and tightening toward home plate. The field itself was the mesocyclone's boundary. I tested the record. Ball 1. The tornado widened. Strike 1. It narrowed and the north gate slammed halfway shut. Runs drew the storm outward. Outs pulled it toward the shelter. We needed to score enough unresolved runs to push the vortex beyond the stadium without completing the third out. I announced the dead players as pinch runners. With each name, footprints appeared in the wet infield. Bases compressed under invisible weight. The 1957 score advanced from 0 to 1, then 2. Spectators finally panicked. Jonah organized players into human lanes and cut the west gate chain with bolt cutters. The shelter door opened 6 inches, then jammed against a layer of compacted red dirt. He knew what blocked it. The 9 boys had not died east of the field. They had been buried in the unfinished shelter entrance to hide that officials locked them out. Jonah's grandfather, Thomas Reed, was not among the bodies. He had survived and accepted money to sign the false casualty map. That was the second reversal. The scorebook was not a victim's record. It was the price of his silence. At 6:44, hail shattered the press box windows. The tornado reached the fairground across the road. We had approximately 6 minutes. I broadcast the truth while Jonah and the team dug at the shelter entrance with bases, rakes, and their hands. The crowd passed dirt in souvenir buckets. They uncovered shoes first, then rusted belt buckles and bones arranged shoulder to shoulder. Each exposed body placed a runner on base. The scoreboard showed bases loaded. County Emergency Manager Curtis Vale arrived in a maintenance truck and cut our radio transmitter cable. His grandfather had been superintendent in 1957. Vale knew the field's history and had blocked every ground survey. He claimed disturbing the remains during a tornado would kill everyone. For a moment, he seemed right. The vortex crossed the parking lot the instant the 9th skull emerged. Vale offered a convincing solution. Call the third out, reseal the shelter, and let the storm follow the old path east. The stadium might survive. The dead would remain buried, but 900 living people could shelter in locker rooms. Jonah nearly agreed. Then I found a notation beneath the scorebook's binding. Game suspended. Visiting team refused field. The 9 boys had reached Carver before the tornado. Officials did not merely deny shelter. They forced them to play an unofficial inning in dangerous conditions to earn entry. Thomas Reed accepted the challenge. When the storm came, adults escaped below and locked the team outside. The third twist changed the rules. The boys were not waiting for their game to finish. They were waiting for the school to forfeit. I reconnected the transmitter using the emergency generator leads. Vale climbed into the press box and struck Jonah with a tire iron. I tackled Vale against the console. Live wires burned through my palm. Jonah, bleeding from the scalp, held him while I opened the microphone. Carver High forfeits the game of May 20th, 1957. The scoreboard went black. Every stadium gate opened. The tornado did not retreat. Without the game's boundary, it expanded across the entire field. We had 90 seconds. Jonah drove the ground's crew's trenching machine through the shelter entrance. Its blade lifted dirt and bones together. Players formed a line carrying remains onto the field while the crowd descended into the open shelter. Wind tore the visitors' stands from their supports. Vale escaped Jonah and tried to throw the scorebook into a drainage grate. I caught it, but the pages ripped free and spun into the vortex. The sirens announced the 9 names again. This time, I answered each with a position. Elias Boone, pitcher. Samuel Pike, second base. Thomas Reed, catcher. Figures formed in rain around the diamond, not bodies, but absences made visible by everything the storm could not move. Jonah stood at home plate beside the shape of his grandfather. Thomas raised one hand. Jonah placed the recovered bones at his feet and said, "You survived." They did not. Tell it straight. The figure pointed toward the dugout. Under its bench, we found the original shelter key on a rotted cord. Jonah carried it to the last mechanical lock. The key turned. 6 remaining doors opened, and the final spectators entered as the tornado struck. I stayed in the press box to keep broadcasting names. Jonah came back for me. The roof lifted. Glass and scorecards filled the air. We crawled down the stairs as the steel light tower fell across home plate. The invisible lineup held its positions until everyone cleared the field. Halfway down, the press box staircase tore away from the stands. Jonah locked one arm through the railing and caught my broadcast cable with the other. I swung over the dugout while the open microphone struck the wall, transmitting every breath. Players below stretched a tarp between them. I cut the cable and fell. The tarp split, but 12 hands kept me from concrete. Jonah jumped after me as the scoreboard sailed over left field, still displaying 9 runs without electricity. Then the storm took them. Carver Field was destroyed. The shelter survived with 917 people inside and only 23 serious injuries. Vail was charged after the scorebook pages landed across town, each stuck to a property owned by a descendant of a 1957 school official. The 9 players received funerals and places in the state athletic record. Jonah and I stood together at the ceremony, though neither of us pretended 20 years of silence had vanished. That was the apparent resolution: truth named, bodies buried, living crowds saved. The first impossible change appeared in the following season's statistics. Every Carver game played since 1957 had been recalculated as a forfeit. Championships disappeared. Scholarships, including mine, had officially gone to other players. Yearbooks showed me in the press box instead of uniform because without the school's stolen legacy, I had never made the team. My memories did not change. Jonah's did. He remembers us broadcasting together from age 16. He remembers a life where I never blamed him for the dropped strike, where we remained friends, and where he married my sister. She has photographs of the wedding. I do not remember attending. The corrected record did more than acknowledge the 9 boys. It revised every life built on the false game. Most people prefer the new history. It is fairer in ways no court could arrange. Families received land, careers shifted, and Curtis Vail became a man no one elected. But anomalies remain around the rebuilt field. No game there can reach a 9th inning. At 2 outs, the warning sirens activate regardless of weather. The home score increases by 9, and footprints circle the bases. The district asked me to announce the dedication game because official records say I have held the job for 26 years. Jonah sat beside me, smiling with the ease of someone who never lost a friend. In the bottom of the 8th, the new scoreboard displayed a 10th name. The scoreboard had drafted me.